Okay, so erythropoiesis or generation of RBC. If you see, some words are in blue, those are present in the bone marrow. Hematocytoblast, rubrioblast, rubriocyte, metarubriocyte. These cells are the progenies of the RBCs. They can present in the bone marrow, whereas reticulocytes, erythrocytes, they are observed in case of general circulation. Dr. Santosh, hello.
Yes, sir.
There is your navigation is there on the basic this thing.
Presentation. Yes, sir.
So I could not able to show or see the things which interfere there.
Okay, sir. 1 minute. Now it is okay, sir.
No. So
which navigation, sir?
Just I will snap it and send it to you.
So can we stop the notifications of participants?
Sorry.
Okay.
Now you can see, sir.
Okay, little bit. I will try. Okay. नहीं ठीक है चलो बाजूला करतो मी नको वरती नको okay no okay okay Santosh I can manage because it doesn't go erythrocyte production. So erythropoiesis, so term erythros means the red and refers to the production of red cells or erythrocytes whose primary function is the gas exchange. As we know, the oxygen has to be transported from the lungs to the tissue and carbon dioxide it has to be transported from the tissue to the lungs, and it is nothing but a gas exchange. It is nothing but a gas exchange, and with the gas exchange there is a another function is carried out by the blood. It is nothing but the acid-base buffering or acid-base balance can be maintained by the blood circulation or the RBC or erythrocytes we can say. Now for the production of erythrocytes we need one important protein or glycoprotein. It is called as the erythropoietin, which is basically released from the kidney tissues. The other direct or indirect stimulus for the erythropoiesis includes the interleukins 3, interleukin 4, interleukin 9. Then the colony stimulating factor that includes the granulocyte macrophage stimulating factors, granulocyte colony stimulating factors, and hormones like growth hormones, insulin like growth factors, testosterone and thyroid hormones. So these are the materials which are stimulates the erythropoiesis. Then the erythropoiesis is primarily synthesized by the kidney, and it affects by promoting the proliferation of erythrocytes and inhibiting the apoptosis. Now, generally, what happens whenever there is no much requirement of RBC, progenies of erythrocytes can be converted or can be removed from the colonies by the process of process of apoptosis. So erythropoietin will stop the erythropoiesis, and whenever there is a hypoxia or the condition, whenever there is a requirement of RBC in circulation, erythropoietin stimulate and the RBCs or the erythrocytes can come into the circulation and to fulfill the volume or the oxygen transportation. One of the potent stimulus for the increased erythropoietin production is the hypoxia. So as we know, the hypoxia can be occurred by the many conditions, includes maybe pneumonia, maybe blood loss, or wherever there is a less number of erythrocytes in the circulation that lead to the hypoxia. Then the another factor is the iron, which is essential for the synthesis of hemoglobin and the function. It is acquired through diet and it is transported to the bone marrow via iron transport protein that is called as a transferrin. So these things are the basic things for the formation of RBCs. Then simply we'll talk about a little bit about the types of anemia. As we know, the morphology, the anemia is based on the morphological basis and the etiological basis. So based on morphological classification of anemia, erythrocytes, then the packed cell volume and hemoglobin concentration of blood can be considered to categorize the morphological anemia. Then the etiological factors which are responsible for the causing anemia. Now first, the morphological classification of anemia. So you can see the normocytic, normochromic, normocytic, hypochromic, macrocytic, normochromic, macrocytic, hypochromic, then the microcytic, normochromic, and microcytic, hypochromic. So this is simply the academic type of classification of anemia. We will see one by one, but not in detail. Just take a look up all these things. Normocytic, normochromic anemia. So it can be observed in the early stage of blood loss anemia, chronic renal failure. And in this case, whenever there is a chronic renal failure or if the persistent normocytic, normochromic anemia until there is a consistent decrease in the hemoglobin concentration, in that case, we can suspect that the bone marrow is inactive or it is one of the feature of the inactive bone marrow. And most of the times it could be observed in case of the chronic renal failure and bone marrow affections. Then the normocytic and hypochromic anemia. This type of anemia can be observed in the blood loss and some maturation defects in the erythrocyte generation. Then macrocytic normochromic anemia. This type of anemia can be observed. Macrocytic normochromic anemia, this can be observed in case of the active bone marrow, extensive hemolysis, late stage of acute hemorrhages, folic acid, and B12 deficiency. So these are some of the factors which are responsible for the macrocytic and normochromic anemia. Then macrocytic hypochromic anemia. This is also indication of the active bone marrow. It can be observed in the acute blood loss, hemolysis, late stage of acute hemorrhage, and folic acid B12 deficiency. Then microcytic normochromic anemia. In this case, this can be observed in case of iron deficiency, copper deficiency, less hemopoietic factors which are responsible for the production of erythrocytes. So all these conditions lead to the microcytic normochromic anemia. Then microcytic hypochromic anemia. This is most commonly observed in case of the deficiency of riboflavin, pyridoxine, copper, iron, and there is a chronic type of hemorrhages, maybe in the intestinal tracts, maybe due to the parasites or something. So all these things come under the microcytic hypochromic anemia. Now the another classification of the anemia is a etiological based classification, that is hemorrhagic anemia, hemolytic anemia, dyshemopoietic anemia. So we can see one by one. So hemorrhagic type of anemia. So acute hemorrhagic anemia can be observed because of the blood loss during the surgery, maybe accident, maybe poisoning, platelet defects, clotting defects. Whenever there is a defects in the liver or the platelet defects are there, poisonings are there, acute blood losses are there, and in such conditions, acute hemorrhagic anemia can be observed. Then chronic hemorrhagic anemia, this is most commonly observed because of the ulceration in the duodenum, stomach, sometimes the platelet defects, and some parasite like Haemonchus. In such conditions, there is a presence of chronic hemorrhagic type of anemia. Sorry, chronic hemorrhagic anemia. The next is a hemolytic anemia. Hemolytic anemia can be observed in case of most commonly observed disease, the Babesia, then the hypophosphatemia, many poisons are there, then immunological reaction, transfusion reaction. So in this case, the acute hemolytic anemia can be observed. Then chronic hemolytic anemia. So this type of anemia is generally observed because of the sensitization of erythrocytes. These sensitized erythrocytes are get removed from the circulation, and the etiological factors includes most commonly the chronic phosphorus poisoning, or chronic phosphorus deficiency, then protozoal disease, chronic protozoal disease, chronic onion poisoning, and chronic toxicities. In all these conditions, the chronic hemolysis, or we can say the extravascular hemolysis, can be observed in these conditions. It's not intravascular, but it is a extravascular, but it is a in the slow form, or the it's a less form. So all these are the things which can come under the hemolytic anemia. Then this hemopietic anemia can be observed mainly or mostly in case of the deficiencies of iron, vitamins, maybe the fat soluble, water soluble vitamins, protein, minerals like copper, cobalt, and phosphorus. Then enteropathy, this is one of the common things or the common factor which can cause anemia in case of various animals. The malabsorption syndrome, chronic intestinal protozoas, chronic proliferative enteritis, thick lamina propria. So all these conditions lead to the enteropathy, and once there is enteropathy, the malabsorption syndrome can be observed, and the ultimate result of that is the assimilated products are in a less quantity and lead to the formation of anemia. Then bone marrow affections, use of antibiotics for a longer period, exposure to the toxic chemicals, toxic rays may lead to the affection to the bone marrow, and hematocytoblast may come under the stress and not producing large number of erythrocytes. Then liver dysfunction. Liver dysfunction can be observed by the many etiological factors, but the ultimate result of the liver dysfunction is the less synthesis of protein, less synthesis of the lipoprotein and metalloproteins. So which these metalloproteins are required for the transportation of the various nutrients, various material towards the bone marrow. And once there is a dysfunction of liver, this dysfunction lead to the this hemopietic anemia, or ultimately the anemia can be observed because of the dysfunction of the liver. Now, up till now, we have discussed the things which that you already know about these things. The different classes of anemia, then what are the etiological factors of anemia. Now here onwards, we actually start with our session, and we are discussing the things that that not ever up till now considered, or they not come under the our research topics, or not come under the picture. So unexplored or recurrent anemia in field condition. So it is most important things, and basically once the as we know, hemoglobin is an essential part of the each and every cycle of the body. So each and every cycle requires the oxygen, and that oxygen has to be carried out by the red blood cells or erythrocytes. So in such cases, the animals which are having the most important for the Indian economy are the cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat, pig, and poultry. So all these animals are giving something to us: the milk, the meat, eggs. So respectively, we are getting the food. Basically, the food we are getting from these animals, and for that purpose, the health of animal is also most important. And most of the times, towards health, we are not much cautious. Means though we know, but till some things are not in our hand. So we have to take care of our animals. And basically, if we looking towards a small portion of the health of the animal is a hemoglobin. So hemoglobin in these animals, cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, and pig, poultry, is most important. We will see one by one how the persistent or recurrent anemia is responsible for the productive losses in the Indian economy, and ultimately it affects the economy of the farmers. Now, I usually use one term that is called as a hidden hunger. Okay, so hidden hunger is nothing but, so all of us are the masters. So as you know, we are all masters in acute and chronic anemia cases. So if the thylaria is there, babesia is there, hypophosphatemia is there, we know how to handle the hypophosphatemia, we know how to handle the acute babesia, we know how to handle the acute thylaria, we know how to handle chronic thylaria, chronic babesia. But the things which come in this lecture, so we'll see one by one. Now, hidden hunger, what we have to see, as we know that we are the masters, but the most of the unaware things are there, in our routine daily life. So that is nothing but the hidden hunger. All of us know the hidden hunger, but not exactly know what is the effect of hidden hunger. So hidden hunger is such type of pathology, I can say, in human as well as in animals, and which affects a lot. Hidden hunger condition observed in case of human beings as well as in animals. So physically, the animals or human being look okay, there is no problem. So physically, he or she may look healthy, but still there is having some problems. So what are those problems? We'll first take some example of the human beings, then you can realize what is the actual effect of the hidden hunger. Now, many times we have a joint pain at certain age. So after 35, 30, 40, you will not able to go to the fifth floor just by the stairs. You need a lift. We are frequently visit to the doctors, family doctors, for the minor problems, maybe the digestive problems, musculoskeletal problems, problems with the vigor, problems with the mood, problems with the uneasiness, and problem with the fatigue. So all these things can be observed in our routine day life, and because of that, we are frequently visiting to our family doctors. Then immunosuppression, this is very true with the small children, because if you see our small children, they have some suffering from cough, continuously cold is there, and continuously there is a nasal discharge. Then once you reach to the doctors, our family doctors, he will prescribe some antibiotics, some tonics, some mineral supplements, non-steroidal drugs, antibiotics, and we feel happy for temporary phase. Again, after few days, again the same thing may happen with us, and continuously we are visiting to our doctors for the such type of things. So this is because of the hidden hunger. Now, what is the hidden hunger exactly, and how it affects? Now we'll discuss about the hidden hunger in case of human beings. So hidden hunger is nothing but the ultimate effect of our disturbed, contaminated, or low standard food chains. So whatever the food we are eating, either maybe animal proteins, animal originated food, food grains, or anything which are eating, it is not up to the standard. Then milk, meat, animal products, food grains are there. We are consuming and are not up to the mark, and that cannot complete our nutritional requirement. So that is come under the hidden hunger. So we are eating a full stomach diet, either in the morning, afternoon, evening. But though we are taking the diet, so till we are suffering from some unknown conditions. So like just I have discussed about the immunosuppression, then the laziness, the uneasiness, and so on. Now, as after looking towards the hidden hunger in case of human beings, and how the animals are responsible for the hidden hunger in case of animals. So just we have to correlate the things. Now, the standard will say that the hemoglobin level should be more. So whatever I have mentioned over here, these are the normal hemoglobin levels that I could find up till now. So after examining so many numbers of the animal, so many numbers of the blood samples. So on an average, I found the 7 to 8 gram% of hemoglobin can be observed in case of dairy animals or the crossbred animals. Then sheep and goat only 5 to 7 gram%, goat 6 to 8 gram%. And these values we can consider as a very low, or that they are lower than the normal standards. And we never think of the causative factors for these reasons. So today we are discussing these causative factors, and which are responsible for the hidden hunger, as well as we can say the recurrent type of anemia in case of the animals. Now this is the chart where you can see the normal level should be what and what we have. In case of cow, we have 7 to 8 gram percent hemoglobin, but actually it should be 8 to 15%. In sheep goat, we are getting 5 to 7 gram percent, but it should be 9 to 15 gram percent. In case of goat, it should we are getting 6 to 8 gram percent, but actually it should be 8 to 12 gram percent. In pig, we are getting 7 to 9 gram percent, but it should be actually 9 to 13 gram percent. So this is a disparity between the normal scenario and the standards. Now, after evaluation and examination of the blood samples of the thousands of animals, I could come to some of the conclusions. Then I have carried out some different biochemical tests, and after doing the biochemical test, the many things come out, and these things need to be corrected. So, which need to be think seriously to correct our food chain. So this correction is ultimately essential for the human beings. So whatever the hidden hunger is there in case of human beings will be get away, or we are getting rid of from the hidden hunger, as well as if we remove the hidden hunger of the animal, then we are able to reduce the hidden hunger in case of ourselves or the human beings. Now thinking over the managemental aspect of the animals, especially if we see the ruminants. So ruminants are getting the food or the foodstuffs that contains the continuous, or there is a continuous feeding of oxalate containing feedstuffs. So oxalates is a nowadays or every time it is a part of our daily feed. Then the poor quality food or the feed ingredients, aflatoxin, then the traces of herbicides, insecticides, then poor quality water. I think we never think of the water up till now. The nitrate content of the water, then the TDS of water. This water is ultimately causes some adverse effect. We will discuss later on also. Then the excess of NPN, the non-proteinous nitrogen sources in the feed. Then environmental stress and production stress. So all these stress are ultimately causes the persistent anemia in case of the animals. Now we'll see one by one and how it acts as the persistent anemia or the hidden hunger in case of the animals. Now, how oxalate causing anemia and production losses. The main target of the oxalate is the kidney, and as we know, the kidney is responsible for the production of erythropoietin. The glomeruli and tubules are mostly affected by the oxalate. Oxalate can combine with a variety of cations such as sodium, magnesium, potassium, calcium to form sodium oxalate, magnesium oxalate, potassium oxalate, and calcium oxalate. Amongst that, calcium oxalate, it is a non-soluble or insoluble in water. That's why it will cause much more damage in case of the kidney tubules. Now, once there is a calcium oxalates are formed, they will cause injury to the tubules, and this is a major effect. So long-standing exposure of the small quantity of the oxalates lead to the nephrotic changes. Long-standing exposure, as we know, daily there is some quantity of the oxalates are continuously entering into the body of the animal, get absorbed and go to the circulation, go to the kidney for the excretion, and during that there is a nephrotic changes, or there is a problem with during the excretion. The ultimate result of this, the damage to the nephrons, is the reduction in the erythropoietin production. So today, few nephrons may affected, tomorrow few more are there. This cycle is continuously going on, and because of that, the animals whose productive life may be 12 years or 13 years will be dropped down, or it can be reduced by the 7 to 8 years. So animal can give 3 to 4 birth, and after that the productive losses are there because of the continuous oxalate feeding. The next thing is that the oxalate is well known to cause crystals of calcium oxalates and will cause cell injury to the by this damaging the cell membranes and the cell membranes of basically the kidney tubules. Now, the production of lipid mediators, that is the prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and the excessive production of reactive oxygen species can be observed whenever there is a interaction between the kidney tubules and the oxalates, all of which lead to an imbalance between the oxidant and inoxidant, and with the malfunction of the mitochondria. So whatever the mitochondria are there within the kidney tubules, they undergo the stress, and ultimately they surrender to the toxic effects of the oxalate, and finally the ultimate result of that is the less erythropoietin production, and ultimately this lead to the formation of or the less erythropoietin production, and that lead to the anemia, or we can say the persistent anemia. That's why we are getting the 7 to 9 gram% hemoglobin throughout the lifespan of the animals. Okay, this is one of the pictures. So how the medulla, then the cortex, paracortex, so everything is there. Now, the quality of feed. So after oxalate, we can see the quality of feed. The quality of feed is the most important factor. So quality includes the toxin levels, basically the aflatoxin levels. So animal feed stuff consisted of the green, dry, concentrate, grain. So all these factors or all these ingredients are consisted of the aflatoxin B1, B2, G1, G2, and once it reaches to the milk, it will be converted into aflatoxin M1, aflatoxin M2. So the traces of these toxins are reaching to us, and that also causes the hidden hunger or the progressive anemia in case of the continuous anemia in case of animal as well as the human beings. Now traces of insecticides, traces of herbicides. So that is also the come under the quality of the food. Then aflatoxins have been associated with the chronic hemolytic anemia. So there is not extensive type of anemia, but it is a chronic type of anemia. It can be observed in case of mammals, that includes the cattle, pig, and the rabbits. Then aflatoxins can cause hemolysis by ROS production and may interact with the DNA and RNA to cause depression of the hemopoiesis. Now, ROS means, as everybody knows, the reactive oxygen species. So whenever there is an interaction between the lipid plasma membrane of the RBC as well as the lipid plasma membrane of the cell, there is a formation of ROS or reactive oxygen species, and that reactive oxygen species will cause the cell membrane damage. And once there is a cell membrane damage, the further necrotic changes can be observed in the cells, and whenever there is ROS production in the plasma, and RBCs undergo the stress and the change in morphology, change in chroma, change in color, and change in the normal ability of the transportation of oxygen and the carbon dioxide, and as well as the buffering action is also affected by the aflatoxins. Now, aflatoxins will cause the chronic liver dysfunction. The main pathogenesis will be remain same. So the cell membranes get affected by the ROS or the reactive oxygen species. Then, as we know, the liver is responsible for the production of the lipoproteins, amino acids, and synthesis of the metalloproteins. So all these things are disturbed by the aflatoxins. As we know, if the traces of aflatoxins are continuously entering into the body, it will reaches to the rumen, then go to the stomach or the abomasum, then go to the intestines, get absorbed from the intestine and go to the liver, and this cycle is continuously going on. So unless we are removed by removed aflatoxin by some using toxin binders, aflatoxins may not be removed from the body. So hepatoportal shunt is there, and there is a continuous excretion, absorption, excretion, absorption is there, and ultimately a very low quantity of the aflatoxins will convert into the more potent, and daily it will cause the liver dysfunction, and finally at a certain age, maybe the 3 years, 4 years, the liver of the animal is undergo fibrosis, or we can call it as a cirrhosis. It's a chronic inflammatory reaction of the liver. So that can be observed, or that can be ultimate effect of the low grade or the small quantity of aflatoxins in the feed or the food of the animal. Now, the next thing is the herbicides or the insecticides and the pesticides. They are affect erythrocytes in a similar manner by production of ROS, reactive oxygen species. Then once the reactive oxygen species are produced, the lifespan of RBC is get reduced. As we know, on an average, erythrocytes are having 100 days of lifespan in irrespective of species. So generally, we are considering 100 days. But due to the continuous production of this ROS, the lifespan of RBC is get changed, it get reduced, and most of the RBCs are gets removed from the circulation. Then there is a disparity between the production versus destruction. So there is a destruction more, or the maybe remains same if the animals are continuously exposed to this kind of toxins, this kind of the pesticide, insecticides. Then they there is a disparity between the production and the destruction, and that lead to the ultimately the effect of this is the anemia. Then the nitrate. Then the another factor is a high nitrate content. The kidneys dysfunction will be there. The high pH. Sorry, this could be the water, quality of water. The high nitrate content of the water. The high content of the water, nitrate content of water will cause dysfunction. The high pH of water will cause the precipitation of proteins, then less mineral absorption. Then high TDS will again affect the kidney tubules, and the persistent low-grade pathogenics, whenever they enter into the intestines, they will cause the persistent enteropathy, chronic type of enteritis or chronic enteropathy, and which will lead to the malabsorption in case of the animals. Then NPN. NPN is also the in the same fashion, it will act over the erythropoietin production. Then it will cause the chronic enteropathies, malabsorption syndrome. Then alkaline pH of the intestine will lead to the malabsorption of iron and other minerals. So those minerals are required acidic medium for the production of erythrocytes. Then, as we know, environmental stress is there. Heat, cold, dryness, and humid things are there. So all these things lead to the environmental stress to the animals. Now, if we think of the sheep and goats, so more than 80% of the sheep and goat population is a non-intensive or the free-range type of grazing is there. So there is a, if we see towards the feed habit or the food habit of the sheep and goat, there is no specific grazing lands for the reserve for the sheep and goat. There is a no challenge feeding. So if the sheep and goats are pregnant, they are the farmers or the grazing. We can see the shepherds, they are not feeding the specific type of some concentrates, some challenge feeding is not there. Then whatever the feedstuffs are available around the areas, they are of poor quality, and many times sheep and goats are getting the food which are sprayed with the herbicide, pesticides. Then a number of pollutants are there. Then sheep and goats are continuously exposed to the heat and cold, as well as the heat and cold stress, as well as they are getting water daily from different areas. Today here, tomorrow at another place. So the water quality is not remain constant, not remain same. So whatever the things are there, maybe there's some drainage water or something are there. They continuously, the sheep and goat populations are exposed to this type of material, herbicide, pesticide, pollutant, heat and cold, bad quality water. Then recurrent and continuous cross production can be observed in this sheep and goat. That's why there is a persistent anemia. So hemoglobin level is not increasing by more than 7%. Then all this material will affect finally on the liver and kidney. So kidney function is affected and the liver function is affected. Ultimately, the poor output is there. Though whatever the meat quality is there, it is not up to the mark. So though we are eating the different dishes of the meat, so just we are eating some delicious things, and with a special type of masalas are there. So because of that, So because of that, there is a problem, not problem we can say, but we don't know. We are not measuring the nutritional status of the dish, whatever is presented to you. Just we are eating the from its external appearance. So the ultimately the effect of that is a we are suffering from the same kind of things that animals are suffering. Now, pathogenesis of all these factors we have discussed earlier. So the pathogenesis of these factors includes the basically there is a formation of ROS. There is a formation of ROS. The ROS means the reactive oxygen species. Either they can directly affect the erythrocytes or they can indirectly affect the erythrocytes by the destruction in the bone marrow. Okay, the most of the factors they stated above they are causing the chronic oxidative stress over the erythrocytes. Chronic oxidative stress that we have never think of up till now. This led to the anemia by either elimination of erythrocytes from the circulation or by multifactorial hindrance in the synthesis of the erythrocytes. As a result of a chronic oxidative stress, there is a disparity in the production of erythrocytes and the destruction of erythrocytes. The continuous formation of ROS or the reactive oxygen species make RBC or erythrocytes very weaker, and such erythrocytes get eliminated from the circulation by the mononuclear phagocytic system of the spleen. So this is one of the picture in that you can see the various ROS has been shown. Various reactive oxygen species that may be nitrous oxide, then the hydrogen peroxide, hydroxyl group. So all these things lead to the destruction of the plasma membrane of the erythrocytes, and once there is a plasma membrane destruction, finally the output is a removal of erythrocytes from the circulation. Now, after that, how to diagnose the persistent anemia caused by all these different etiological factors. Now, how to measure? The measurement of ROS, measurement of reactive oxygen species, superoxide dismutase, lipid peroxidase, glutathione peroxidase. So these can be measured, but you can say at field conditions, these things are not possible because it required a little bit more type of instruments, spectrometries, but at field condition it is not possible. But we can go for the another type of observation. So how to identify the stress on the erythrocytes? So here we must have examined large number of erythrocytes during our regular examination of the blood smears. So careful examination of erythrocytes during the blood smear examination, it is one of the tool which can you use at the field level. No doubt, the other things which are the superoxide dismutase, lipid peroxidase, the glutathione, these are the academic oriented type of research, and detection of oxidative stress in field condition. It is based on the extensive examination, I can say. The very careful or powerful examination of erythrocyte is essential for the examination of these things in the field condition. Now, measurement of the oxidative stress. The excessive oxidative stress in case of erythrocyte is observed in the following conditions. So we never think of this till now. Now, if we see at the birth of the newborn animal or human beings, so maybe newborn calf, kid, lamb, or kid. So everywhere, whenever there is a birth, the oxidative stress is extensive. The much more oxidative stress is there in the during the immediately after birth of the animal. Then many physiological conditions are there that lead to the more and more oxidative stress. So one of the important factor is a calving. During the calving, expulsion of placenta and involution of uterus, the oxidative stress of the animal is much more. Then oxidative stress is much more at the peak yield of the production. Animal is overstressed, and because of the overstressed mammary gland, there is a overproduction of ROS, and ultimately the animal is under stress. Then advanced pregnancy, as we know, there is a extensive growth of calf or the fetus can be observed in the last trimester. So for that reason, in advanced pregnancy, the high oxygen demand is there, and it is one of the factors which can lead to the extensive oxidative stress in the animals at the advanced pregnancy. Now this is one of the chart you can see. I have given one example of the newborn animals. So newborn animals, especially I have taken the sodium SOD, basically SOD in case of calf, kid, lamb and piglet. So if you see the larger or the heighted building of the this graph is of the piglets. So piglets by birth they are having the iron deficiency. So for that reason you can see the oxidative stress in the newborn piglet is extensive. So for that purpose we need to give the iron supplementation to the sow as well as to the kid of the piglet as soon as there is a birth of piglet is there. So if you see day by day, on day the oxidative stress is more, but comparatively oxidative stress is there less at the 28 days, but it is not below the normal. It is continuously there in the newborn animals. Now here I am giving some of the examples of the oxidative stress of the in the different animals in the different trimester or the different stages of the physiology. So SOD per gram of erythrocytes in a various physiological states has been given over here. So here the calving day, on the day of calving, then the 1 month, early pregnancy and last trimester. So you can see there is a progressive change in the oxidative stress in the different stages of the lifespan of the animals. Now different physiological conditions having the different type of erythrocyte oxidative stress. In different physiological stages, more oxidative stress is there on erythrocytes. The factors which are discussed earlier will enhance the pathogenesis of the hidden hunger or the progressive anemia in case of the animal, and this progressive anemia is observed because of the excessive production of the reactive oxygen species, which will make some critical conditions. Say for example, if pregnancy is there and if the pregnancy stress is there plus oxidative stress is there, so ultimately the final output of that animal is either it may come under the extensive heat stress. If the nowadays such type of conditions are there, animal may undergo the extensive heat stress, then the sudden change in the respiratory movements. So all these things come under the extensive production of the reactive oxygen species, and ultimate result of this is the lead to the persistent anemia in case of animals. Then animals are not, whenever there is a production of this all reactive oxygen species, the animals are not able to do their functions up to the mark. The optimum functions are not observed, and ultimate result of that is the less production. Now detection of oxidative stress at the field conditions. Now here I can say you must be the master of the erythrocyte. So you must observe the erythrocyte. No doubt you are able to identify the different parasites in the erythrocytes. They may be Babesia, maybe the Anaplasma, maybe Theileria, maybe Haemobartonella. So different kinds of hemoprotozoans can be observed from the erythrocytes. But how to identify the oxidative stress? So here you must observe the careful morphology of erythrocytes, then chroma content of the erythrocytes, and change in the shape and size of erythrocytes. So all these factors are essential for the identification of oxidative stress. Now, whenever you have come across to the normal blood picture, so generally we are looking towards the erythrocytes which are infected by the some parasites, but we are not looking towards the other erythrocytes which are having some problems. So here, if the homogeneous things are there, we can say it's okay. If the RBCs are or the erythrocytes are homogeneous throughout the picture, if the hemoglobin, throughout the picture, if the erythrocytes are homogeneous, then we can say it's okay. There is nothing. But if you see carefully, some RBCs are off color. The color of the RBCs is little bit changed, the normal bright pink color can be changed into the some off-white, some the sorry, not off-white. It is a off color. It become little bit not bright. It's a dull. RBCs are dull. Little bit change in the shape of erythrocytes. You can see some of the erythrocytes are having the change in shape. Some are having the change in the color chroma. So this is a minimal type of, or the very less type of ROS, or the oxidative stress over the surface of the RBC. There is a change, change in the color and appearance of the erythrocytes. You can see some other example. You can see here also some of the erythrocytes, they have changed their shape, then change in their chroma. So these two are the minimal things, or the minimum oxidative stress was there. But here, if you see, large number of erythrocytes are having the change in shape and change in color also. So based on this, the oxidative stress can be observed. Here you can see more than 50% of the erythrocytes are having the off color, or the polychroma. You can say the polychroma. It is not exactly polychroma, but the brightness of RBC or the brightness of erythrocyte has been changed, and the RBCs look, erythrocyte look very less. Erythrocyte look dull, and if we are observing such type of dull erythrocytes, definitely these dull erythrocytes are not able to transportation of oxygen, and these type of erythrocytes has to be removed from the circulation. Here also, in this type of erythrocytes can be observed in the multi-toxic type of conditions. So many type of toxins are there. Then sometimes there is a formation of membrane attacking complex during the immunological reaction. In such condition, the erythrocytes will have some small micropores, or the small vacuoles, we can say, small bubble-like things are there, or the small pores, or the that chroma has been diminished, or it get damaged. So such type of erythrocytes can be observed in the extreme oxidative stress. In case of the animals, it can be observed in the immunological reaction. It can be observed in the chronic type of hemolysis, then the poisoning conditions, onion poisoning, urea poisoning. In all these conditions, you can see this kind of erythrocytes. So in this type of erythrocytes, we can able to identify. And if you correlate the erythrocytes, and you may try for few cases. If you see this type of abnormalities, just go for estimation of the some free radicals, or the ROS from the maybe glutathione, maybe the superoxide dismutase. So you can go for the identification of this, or the estimation of this for few cases for your basic understanding. So you can correlate these two things with the productive losses, and then the as well as the losses can be observed because of the ROS production, and ultimate result of that is the persistent anemia, or the anemia can be observed in case of the animals. Here also you can see some of the alterations on the in the surface of the erythrocytes. Then there is a change in chroma of the erythrocytes and change in the shape of the erythrocytes. I will not take some specific terms that every pathologist know, that poikilocytes, aneuplocytosis, or nothing. So I will not use that term in the field conditions, because nobody will understood. But we must understood, and we have to interpret it, and we have to find out the remedies as in the field conditions. So in academic things, we are not required to go further some type of remedies, but in field conditions, the farmers will come to us for the remedies only. Okay, so after the persistent pathogenesis of the persistent anemia and the observation under microscope, we can see the clinical signs of the persistent anemia. So and this is nothing but the ultimate effect of the persistent anemia, or the hidden hunger, we can say. So major effect of the hidden hunger or persistent anemia will be affecting more in the following manner. There is a less production of than the expectation. Now, say for example, if the cow which is having 7 hemoglobin and cow which is having the 10 hemoglobin. So this is the difference. This is the difference. So that is difference, nothing but the ultimate result of the hidden hunger. The continuous production of the ROS ultimately causes anemia, and the persistent anemia ultimately affects the productive losses, or there are productive losses in case of the animals. Then there is a loss in the productive, there is a loss in the body score. There is a loss in weight gain. The reproductive failure is there. Then the expectation, then the fatigue of the working animals, and immunosuppression is there. The effect of immunosuppression is the recurrent mastitis can be observed in case of the animals whenever there is animals are suffering from the ROS, or the continuous or the persistent stress, persistent anemia. Now the next part is how to manage the persistent anemia, or how to manage the hidden hunger. Now it is not possible that we are not getting the feed of the animal without oxalates. So traces of oxalate must be there, or they should be there. So without that, the feed is not complete. Then we can reduce the quantity of aflatoxin, but we are not able to get 100% rid of from the aflatoxins, and it is not possible from the other feedstuffs of the animals. We don't have any control or on the unnoticeable residues of the herbicide, insecticide, pesticides in the feedstuffs of the animals. And the daily toxin detection will be costly. If anybody wants to identify the toxins on the daily basis, the cost of the each and every toxins will be much more higher. So it's what we have to do. Just we have to be with this and try to reduce the amount of oxalate, try to reduce the amount of aflatoxins, try to reduce the amount of insecticide, pesticides from the feed by the better management aspects in the fodder production, and ultimately we want to make optimum health of the animal. So after that, we should go for the treatment aspect of the hidden hunger or persistent anemia. So basically, the animals which are having the nutritional deficiency, they are more susceptible to the hidden hunger, or they are more susceptible to the recurrent type of anemia. So here, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin D, B complex supplementation is required on regular basis. Then we must have a calcium and phosphorus. If there is a reduction in the phosphorus level, ultimately it will cause the changes in the lifespan of the erythrocytes, and ultimately it will affect the health of animal, or ultimately it will affect the anemia or the blood content of the animals. Then regular toxin binders should be used in the feed. Then iron supplementation during the crucial phases of the extreme oxidative stress along with the oxidant. So basically we should take care of the animal generally from the 1 month before calving and 1 month after delivery. So that is the very crucial phase. So in that phase, there is an exponential growth of the fetus is there. The animal is under stress, as well as the mammary glands are developing fastly. Then the fetus is also growing fastly, and ultimately the oxygen demand is much more. So to fulfill the oxygen demand, we must be much more careful about this. And the 1 month before and 1 month after of the delivery. So what we have to do? So here I'm happy to share that a trial has been conducted with the health one product, that is a charcoferol. So this trial has been conducted in cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat in regular natural conditions without disturbing their regular measurement, regular managemental aspects. No any physiological stress was considered. Now here just we have given the charcoferol for the 2 months period, and here I am sharing only the 14 days data with you. The trial conducted in cows, the numbers were 40, and before giving treatment, the hemoglobin level was on an average was 7.65, gram percent. During or the after 7 days of the treatment, it was 8.24, and after 14 days, it was 9.9 gram percent in case of cattle. In case of buffaloes, hemoglobin concentration was 9.06 before giving treatment, and 7 days after treatment it was 11.16, and 14 days after treatment it was 13.83. Now, if you compare the comparison between this first and 14 days, we can see ultimately there is a disparity of the 4 gram percent. Now, grazing sheep and goat trial has been conducted. In case of sheep, the initial concentration of hemoglobin was 6.1, and after 14 days, it will go to the 8.65 gram percent. In case of goats, 60 numbers were there in sheep and goat. The hemoglobin concentration was 5.9, and which will went to the 8.29 gram percent after 14 days. So this was the ultimate result of the trial of the hemoglobin and the effect of sarcopherol on the hemoglobin of the animals. Now, as we have discussed, the last trimester or the last 1 month of the last trimester and 1 month after coming or delivery is most crucial. During that phase, we have to give much more emphasis on the iron supplementation, then the antioxidant to the animals, and definitely to get rid from the different problems of the factors which can cause the persistent ROS production in the animal. We should have a very good type of food, because we have to start living. Means we don't have any option. So aflatoxin we can't reduce completely. The oxalate we can't reduce completely. The other productions of the insecticide, pesticides, we don't have any control over that. So whatever the things are there in our hand, we try to make it in an optimum level. Vitamin AD3, then the regular optimum supplementation of calcium, phosphorus, then the top dressing of the calcium, phosphorus in the feed, and the concentrate, the regular use of the toxin binders, and iron supplementation during the stress conditions. We can go for the iron supplementation, and finally, ultimate result of that, we have to remove the oxidative stress in the animal by giving the extra iron supplementation. So now here we could come to the conclusion or the conclude our session. Here I will say be in touch. In this webinar, I have shared my field-oriented problems or the field-oriented solutions. All questions may not be answered over here, but here I may suggest some peoples. Those are academicians over here, especially the pathologists and the biochemistry, physiology peoples. They can allot such type of field-oriented PG and PhD topics for the understanding the ROS, then the persistent anemia, and different physiological status of the animals and how they affect the persistent anemia. And if you want to share some hematological pictures or the postmortem pictures, you can share with me if you have any type of difficulties. Here I want to share something to you. Here the highlighter, the magazine we are going to launch in the few days. So this highlighter magazine will be dedicated for the professionals, then the veterinary professionals, the professionals which are present in the different toxicological work, then the regulatories. So we are dedicating this magazine for these peoples, and ultimately you may become the part of this magazine also. Before giving my number, I can acknowledge the team Alembic, Dr. Karunati, the Vice President of Alembic, Dr. Santosh Shinde, Dr. Sanjay Latkar, Dr. Naresh Kulkarni, Dr. Ramit Singh, Dr. Gangadhar Thambre, and I can thank to one person of Alembic. It has that person has come around 100 kilometers or more than 100 kilometers to support me over here for this webinar. So Mr. Suraj is there, and I will thank to Suraj and all team of Alembic. Thank you for giving the opportunity to discuss the anemia, persistent anemia, and the different types of aspects of the anemia. Here, my WhatsApp number is given over here. If I am not able to answer your questions, you can WhatsApp me on this number, and definitely I can give answer to your questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, Santosh.
Yeah. Dr. Naresh and Amit, proceed with some of the questions.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is one question
Yeah.
from Dr. Shahjan, which says that is it advisable to give iron injection in case of anemia due to IMHA?
IMHA.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what do you mean IMHA?
Maybe, sir, immune mediated hemoglobin anemia.
Okay. Now, if anemia is there, immune mediated hemoglobin anemia, you want to say hemolytic anemia.
Yes, sir.
Immune mediated hemolytic anemia. Now, first thing is that any kind of immunological anemia is there. So we should go basically for the steroids first. So because the steroid can subside the complement reaction which has been takes place within the body. So as we know, complements are formed within the body whenever there is immunological reaction. So first thing is that we have to stop the inflammatory reaction, and once the inflammatory reaction has been stopped, we should give iron injection, no problem, because we don't know from which type of things or which type of etiological factor that immunological reaction is observed. But irrespective of the immunological reaction, we have to stop, or we have to cut the immunological reaction or the further inflammatory reaction. We have to stop by giving the steroids. So unless we are not giving steroids, the immunological reaction will not be stopped. So as we know, it will stop the arachidonic acid pathway directly. Arachidonic acid pathway is directly affected or stopped by the steroids only, not anti-inflammatory. The NSAID will not stop this pathway. So better way, we should go for the steroids. Once you stop the arachidonic acid pathway, then we will go for some specific treatment. So definitely, though it is hemolytic anemia, we have to give iron, not on the same day or not on the same time, but on the next day we have to give iron injection, because many times what happen, the severe inflammatory reaction is there, and if you give iron injection, sometimes the reaction may go beyond the limit. So animal may become more hypersensitive to the iron, and extensive inflammatory reaction can take place. Sometimes animal may show symptoms like colic, and I have observed there is an intussusception like condition can be observed in case of animals whenever there is a immune mediated hemolytic anemia is there, and accidentally the injection of iron has been given. So it is our duty that first we have to stop the immune mediated hemolytic anemia. I don't know for which condition you are asking, but basically we have to stop immune mediated hemolytic anemia by giving some steroids, and then on next day, if the hemolysis is stopped, then along with that you must have phosphorus orally, injectable phosphorus. You may go for some elemental phosphorus or whatever things which are available with you, but you have to give phosphorus, and along with that the oral hematinics must be there along with your supportive treatment. Okay, is he convinced? Hello?
Yes, sir.
As I know, sir, you have given in-depth answer to this question. I think Dr. Sharan has
till if he's having some problem, he can just send WhatsApp to me. No problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other question?
Sir, there is one more question that particularly on the oxalates, as you were describing. So, can we, which feed has the higher oxalates that needs to be avoided? And is there any feed which is having the low amount of oxalate? Which can be fed to the large ruminants and small ruminants? The question asked by Dr. Samir Chetri.
Okay, so general, I will give broad classification of the feed stuff. Those feeds are having a small thrones over their leaf. Okay, simple. Those feed stuffs are having the small thrones, or we can say small hair-like structures are there on their leaf. So all these products are having the more oxalates. So maybe the sugarcane tops, maybe the bajras, or the tall grass, bajra grass, or everything, those are having the small thrones or the small pellets or small hair-like structures on their leaf structures. So all these are having the oxalate or more oxalate. So the top of the material which is having oxalate is the sugarcane tops. So sugarcane tops is having the excess of oxalate. So without sugarcane, in most of the country, most of the part of country, we don't have any other feeds. So our animals are constantly eating sugarcane tops, sugarcane. Basically, we have to give this type of feeds. We don't have any option.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So
Any
there
other
is,
question?
yeah. So there is one more question, that what type of feed and water can be advisable for improvement of hemoglobin level in cattle, to improve the hemoglobin level as such. So is there any, there are some fodders which can improve the hemoglobin level as such in cases
Uh,
of anemia.
So some beets are there, or the roots we can say. Some
Yes,
roots are there, root feeds. But those are all they are the non-conventional feeds. We are not regularly using that. But as we are eating the beet, the same kind of beets we can use for the animals. But for 12 months or throughout the year, beet production is not possible because it could be seasonal, and we are not giving only the beets to the animals. So generally, the roots are having the a little bit more iron supplementation, but the 100% recovery we are not getting from the feed. So for that reason, we must have some external source of iron supplementation to the animals. But the feeds, or generally the root feeds, they are having the more amount of iron. So one is a beet, then another would be the sugar beet, or we can say sugar potato.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there are so many questions, but I will take it one more peculiarity question where,
Yeah.
which erythrocyte changes occur in stress
Mm-hmm.
animals, or the animals which are having the stress or the oxidative stress as such.
Okay. I will go to the slide once again. So here again, the careful examination of the blood smear is important. We must be, or we must be the master in the erythrocytes. So we must know the normal erythrocyte shape, normal size of the erythrocyte, and the appearance of the erythrocytes. Normal healthy erythrocytes is a bright pink color, having the brightness or glistening type of erythrocyte will be there. Now, whenever there is oxidative stress, of irrespective of etiology, I will not give any single example of the ROS. Any type of ROS production or the stress over the surface of RBC or on the erythrocytes, definitely that stress factor will affect. The first thing is the phospholipid membrane, which is present over the it is a part of erythrocytes. So erythrocyte is a part, the erythrocyte is made up of the phospholipids. Phospholipid membrane is there. That membrane undergo the production of the small particles of this free radicals, and they will affect the cell membrane of the erythrocytes, and because of that, there is a first alteration that observed is the change in the color of the RBC. RBC will look dull. Then there is a change in the shape of RBC. There is a misshapen RBC. The normal round structure of the elliptical or the normal round structure, globular structure is get changed, and RBC will look maybe the triangular, maybe having the spike-like conditions. There may be the formation of some small globules over the surface of RBC. So if you observe careful examination, or if you observe the RBCs very carefully, you will able to identify the so many conditions which can be cause stress in the stress over the RBCs or the erythrocytes.
Thank you very much, sir. I hope that Dr. Lalit Modi has been convinced with your answer. Sir, last two questions I'll take it, sir. That the FAMACHA scoring will help in anemia management, that which we usually use it in the field for the sheep and goat, for the small ruminants. That anemia scoring sheet.
Sheet in case
Yes,
of
small ruminants. like sheep and goats.
Uh,
So according to the colors, the degree of
okay, okay,
anemia
okay.
can be classified as such. So that is the question
Okay,
which has been
I will
asked.
share. Just ask him to give
Yes, sir.
give
Yes,
his
sir. So
WhatsApp number.
the last question, last but one question, that will
I'll,
erythropoietin injection helps in anemic patient with kidney failure, or how to manage anemia in such a patients, particularly for
okay, okay.
it,
Now,
it it
hi,
may
yes,
be in,
yes, yes.
particularly in dogs and all.
Temporary, you get relief from the anemia.
Yes, sir.
Temporary, you may get relief from the anemia, but erythropoietin is possible in case of the pet animals, basically. The pet, because the owners of pet animals are afford to give injection of the erythropoietin, because the erythropoietin is a little bit costly, and 1 ml is costing about 3,000 rupees. But if you go to the cattle, and the requirement of cattle is around you can say the 5 ml or 10 ml of the erythropoietin is required for the cattle. Now, 3,000 into 10, so 30,000 will not be offered by the farmers. So it can be offered by the pet owners.
Pet
Yeah,
owners.
yeah.
This question is pertaining to the pet owner only, sir.
Okay, okay.
Dr.
So
Samir has asked this.
simply, we can lengthen the lifespan of that particular dog, but ultimately the inert or the inborn erythropoietin will not be regenerated, or it will not be. Once the kidneys are damaged, there is no other solution. Just you may go for the what we say, the dialysis, or everything is there, but once the kidneys are completely damaged, there is no regeneration. So we have to give external sources. So periodically you may go for the blood transfusion, you may go for the erythropoietin injection. But ultimately, once the kidneys are damaged, the toxins or the uremia, which is persistently present in that particular animal, and it will cause the some adverse effect over the liver, like the synthesis of protein will not be there. Then the toxins, they are continuously causing the oxidative stress over the different organs, and then the uremic conditions will lead to the ulcerations. So though we are giving some oral medications in a very good quality, till because of the ulceration, the acidic medium or the assimilation of products is not there, the hydrolysis of product is not there, and ultimate result of that, the malabsorption is there, and ultimately the kidney failure result is as we know, the finally sometime we may put to sleep the animals because of the kidney failure cases. So erythropoietin will give temporary phase, or the temporarily increase in the anemia, but short period. But ultimately, because of the ultimate result of uremia, will definitely affect the bone marrow. So bone marrow cells are not also up to the mark. The hematocytoblast is not able to do its function, but with the help of little bit erythropoietin, a little bit change or a little bit chances are there, but we can't regenerate the kidney.
Okay, sir. The last question. I know there are so many questions we cannot answer each and every one.
Okay,
But the
okay.
last question, sir, that did you perform any experiment on microflora which evolved as a mutant microflora after giving oral iron supplementation? Oral iron supplementation.
Okay, I have not gone through this, but it's good
Dr.
suggestion.
Ranjan has asked.
I will go for next study.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, sir.
definitely I will go for the next study. So I will give iron supplementation and looking to the microflora, and definitely I will convey him.
Sir, there are the field veterinarian who has asked so many questions. Because of the time, we could not ask each and every question. But
Okay.
I'll assure each and every veterinarian that it will be answered by sir only. We'll be getting in touch with sir over email and over communication as well. So it will be answered. But because of the time constraint, we cannot ask each and every question to the sir now. So over to Dr. Santosh Shinde, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
One thing, I apologize. I forgot to take the name of the AGM, Dr. Rajesh Sharma, Alembic. So I will thankful to him also, who has provided this opportunity for the giving webinar for the field veterinarians. So thank you, Rajesh Sharma sir, AGM Alembic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naresh. Thank you, sir. On the behalf of all the participants, Alembic Pharmaceutical Limited, myself, Dr. Santosh Shinde, express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi sir for such a informative presentation on anemia. Sir, your presentation will definitely help the field veterinarian for identification, correction and treatment of persistent anemia in livestock. Sir,
Right, right.
as you have said that hidden hunger, all the field veterinarian got the hidden learning hunger, so that in future also, sir, we want such a topic from your side, so we will upgrade our knowledge, so hence we can serve the society. Last but
Yes,
not
yes.
least, I will thank all the participating veterinarians, alembic field staff for making this webinar successful. Thank you once again, Dr. Suryavanshi sir. Thank you for all the participants.
Thank you.